Welcome all. I'm joined today by Hauer, a journalist who spent a great deal of time in Armenia during and after the 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh war. He is in Kyiv now, a city being bombarded, where an exodus has begun and Russian troops have launched multiple offensives. Neil, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
First off, can you tell us about the situation? There are multiple reports that Russian troops have entered Kyiv, and you recently put out a tweet that there are reports that Russian troops have entered the government district. What are you hearing? What can you tell us about the situation?
Yeah, I mean, it seems that, we saw reports coming in very early morning that Russian troops armored columns were getting closer from both the north and the east of Kyiv. And then in the last few hours, it seems that Russian special forces have entered the city. I mean, from my apartment here, we can hear occasional bursts of automatic gunfire from somewhere off to the west. I'm right on Pashatik Street in downtown, the heart of downtown Kyiv, and occasional booms in the distance. So there's definitely fighting taking place somewhere not so far from here in the city.
And how is today different from yesterday?
I mean, today is different in that yesterday was just such a shock to everyone. Today, is also a shock, but I also don't think people expected that this would happen so quickly, that on the second day we'd be dealing with Russians in the city. But I mean, people have adapted quickly too. We were in the shelter last night as the Russian airstrikes hit, or the missile strikes hit, and people are resilient. We're adapting to it quickly as well.
And what are people doing? The Moldovan, the Polish, and other European governments are preparing for an exodus, and there is lots of footage of people trying to get out of Kyiv and head west. Are most people staying put, or are people trying to escape? How would you assess the mood of the people there?
I mean, I think a lot of people have left. In the city itself, it's extremely quiet. There's only a trickle of civilian traffic outside, both cars and passengers. And, it's just about everything is shuttered here. And, whoever is left is sheltering inside. So, as you look at it now in Kyiv, which is normally a bustling city of 3 million people, is just about a ghost town right now.
And what's the situation of the Ukrainian military? What are you hearing in Kyiv? The Russian forces have made advances near Kharkiv, Chernobyl, and also north of Crimea, but there are reports going on recently of Ukrainian victories as well. What are people hearing in Kyiv?
Yeah, I mean, the Ukrainians have definitely inflicted some fairly heavy losses on them. I think the UK estimates that the Russians lost about 400 killed yesterday in the first day of the invasion, which very high toll for one day. But at the same time, we see that the areas where it seemed like Ukrainian forces were having success yesterday, and then in the northeast, Russian forces have made quite a big advance from that direction towards Kyiv. And at the same time, yesterday Russia deployed. They only actually engaged, well under half the forces they had arrayed for this operation. So I think today they realized that they needed to commit more, because the Ukrainians did put up a strong fight yesterday. I think stronger than they expected. So today they're committing more forces and they're really pushing for it.
And the invasion was very sudden, and all air travel suddenly stopped. I'm sure there are plenty of foreigners stranded in Ukraine. Have you met any of them? Is this the case?
Yeah, I mean, I think the majority of us here foreigners are journalists, but there are, of course, other people, civilians. I mean, I've seen lots of Indian students, who are stuck here, and from plenty of other Europeans as well. And some of these people are sitting at their embassies. At the French embassy, they have a French special forces team deployed there protecting them. And yes, some of the other embassies have their own military forces present as well.
And US Secretary of State Antony Blinken stated today that he believes that Russia will attempt to overthrow the democratically elected government of Ukraine and install a pro-Russian government. Do you see signs of this happening?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's happening as we speak. This sort of decapitation strike on the Ukrainian government that we read about that U.S. intelligence predicted is what's occurring right now with Russian special forces units coming into Kiev trying to accomplish that. You know, we got reports of fighting at in the government district, and also reports that Ukrainian MPs have been armed themselves. So that strikes me as a pretty dire situation.
I mean, the Ukrainian government is calling on citizens to resist the invasion, to arm themselves, to even make homemade projectiles. Are the people you're speaking to prepared to resist?
I mean, there's certainly people who are, you know, there's plenty of people who are planning to do that, but at the same time, it's easy to have that idea that you will do that before until you're actually faced with the combat itself. So it's really hard to say how many people are actually going to take out. I think there will be quite a good chunk that do resist like that. But if this goes quickly, you know, if the government is taken out today, then I think that the sense of futility will set in and will really sap away at that number.
And finally, your Twitter is very comprehensive, really following the details of what's going on. My last question is two-pronged. Number one, did you expect this? And number two, what do you think is going to happen next?
I mean, I did expect it. I didn't until a month or so ago, but with the sheer mass of forces that they built up, and the fact that, you know, all the military experts following this were saying this is going to be this is not some force gathered for a small operation in the east. This is going to be the full-scale invasion. I about a month ago, I switched to believing that was going to be the outcome, and then especially on Monday after Putin's speech, where he ranted about how Ukraine's a fake country, and then recognized the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Republics at the end. At that point, it seemed like a fait accompli. And as for what comes next, I mean, it could be very quickly. I thought that this would go on for a decent while, but if the fact that Russian special forces are already in the capital means that, you know, today really will be decisive. Either those guys are driven off and pushed back, and the Ukrainians can form up a proper defense of the capital, or if they succeed and they're in there and they manage to, you know, capture the Ukrainian government, the top officials, then we're going to have a very different situation.
Well, Neil, thank you very much for your time. Please stay safe.
Thank you, and looking forward to be back in Armenia after this.
And we look forward to having you. Thank you for joining us on CivilNet.